The glamour and pageantry that surrounds the Helix High School athletic tradition has long been epitomized by the award-winning Highlander Band. Tonight, on a cool December evening, they would lead the way into Diego Stadium as their football team went after a CIF crown. Going into tonight's contest, the 1980 Highlanders have had a truly remarkable season. Head coach Jim Arnize has led his club to 11 straight wins and a Grossmont League championship. Arnize has assembled a staff and group of players that have become the talk of San Diego County. Helix is playing for the county title for the second time in 3 years, having captured the crown in 1978. Now, only 2 years later, they're back with an almost entirely new group of players. It's tough to reach the top, and even tougher to stay there. Arnize and his staff are aware of the difficulty, aware that they have defeated tonight's opponent earlier in the year, a fact that can often mean a fatal letdown. But if this team can maintain the momentum, well, they certainly have the personnel to win it all. Number 14 is Kevin Durden, a 3-year starter, one of only 2 Scotties who played on the championship 1978 club. Durden, an outstanding all-around athlete, was the spark plug of Coach Jeff Patel's ground game, averaging over 5 yards a carry. Carl Durrell also had a big year, coming up with key plays like this crucial scoring run versus Granite Hills. The big win over the playoff-bound Eagles was one of the great moments of 1980. Durrell was the club's second leading scorer. Number 36, John Trosco, and number 87, Leon White, could be called upon for the tough inside yardage. Co-captain White was a virtual wrecking crew, steamrolling opponents. 9 Highlanders carried the ball in 1980, playing a vital role in the club's versatile offense. Numbers 12 and 7 figured in an awful lot of scoring plays during the campaign. Number 12 belonged to quarterback Jim Plump, and he spent a great deal of time aiming passes at Alan Durden. 38 of those aerials reached their target, and Durden turned them into 817 yards and a club-leading 12 touchdowns. Carl Durrell also caught passes and scored 6 touchdowns through the air to go along with the pair he garnered on the ground. The All-Leaguer had almost 1,000 yards of total offense. Craig Galloway was the team's 3rd leading receiver, and his 24 receptions resulted in 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Galloway was voted the club's most improved player. Co-captain Kevin Durden grabbed 20 tosses, and the veteran All-Leaguer's presence helped take the pressure off the other Scotty receivers. And there were a bunch of them. 9 Highlanders found themselves on the receiving end of Jim Plum aerials. The CIF Player of the Year completed 149 passes for 2,400 yards and 22 touchdowns. He set 3 CIF records and tied 2 others as the Helix offense dazzled San Diego County. While the Scotty offense was racking up points, the Helix defense was racking up ball carriers. In 1980, no less than 7 defenders won All-League recognition, 4 of those players making first or second team All-CIF. The line charge was led by David Ledesma, voted the team's top defensive lineman. He was joined by standouts like Tim Rudd, John Walter, and Bill Wright. They were ably assisted by a linebacking core that featured Al Fernandez, Dan Nicholson, Andy Weddy, and Terry Belcher. Defensive coordinator Rick Ash and linebacker coach Ray Bosch could only sit back and smile when contemplating this crew. When opponents tried to pass, the ball was often likely to come down in the arms of Ray Hernandez's secondary. The Highlanders picked off 17 passes in 1980, and All-League standout Bob Jekyll nailed 10 of those. That figure represented a new CIF record. He had plenty of help from Steve Crocker, Dan Hammerschmidt, Steve Mosier, and Leon White. As good as the Highlanders played on both sides of the football, it figured that their special teams would also know how to play the game. In key league conquests of Mount Miguel and Granite Hills, the guys in green dominated the action from the opening kickoff. Throughout the 9-game regular season, the Highlanders had played alert, aggressive football. As they entered the playoffs, Helix was aware that this would be an entirely new ball game. Round 1 would feature a classic battle against the Torrey Pines Falcons. From the opening kickoff, it quickly became apparent that the Highlanders were in a football game tonight. The white-clad Falcons came into this game thinking upset, and if the first quarter action was any indication, that outcome was not out of the realm of possibility. Late in the period, the Highlanders finally began to get their act together. Unfortunately, the spark was soon doused by a heads-up Falcon secondary. The Helix defense decided that 2 could play the turnover game, and just like that, the offense was back on the field. Big Leon White had been injured most of the year, but had chosen a fortuitous time to make his reappearance. But even as the Highlanders began to chalk up the yardage, a curious thing was taking place. Despite its apparent success, the Helix offense was spending too much time in its own backyard. Time began to run out. Late in the final stanza, reserve quarterback Tim Poles made the big play. With Plum out with an injury, Poles hit Alan Durden inside the 5. Moments later, John Trosco barreled in for the tying score, and this game was going into overtime. Each team gets 4 plays from the other team's 10-yard line. Helix first. Poles loops a scoring pass to Alan Durden, and the reliable Scott Webb hits the PAT. Helix by 7. Here come the Falcons. Pass over the middle. We're tied again. Here we go one more time. Highlander football. Poles into the corner for Durden. Touchdown. The Falcons have 4 tries from the Scotty 10. On first down, they get nothing. Second down, nothing again. On third down, Torrey Pines manages to move the ball to the 1-yard line. One more play. This could be it. Handoff up the middle. Does he make it? No, he stops short of the goal line. Helix wins. The Highlanders win their 10th straight and advance to round 2 of the CIF playoffs. The second round opponent would be the Avocado League champion Poway Titans, and the Highlander defense gave the North County visitors a rather rude greeting. Jim Plum marshaled his forces deep into Titan territory, setting up a Scott Webb field goal attempt. The All-League kicker, who had set a CIF record with 32 consecutive points after touchdown, proved he could hit from a greater distance. 3-0 Highlanders. Determined to maintain this slim advantage, the Helix defense tightened the screws. When Poway moved close enough for the tying field goal, they were denied by Steve Crocker. It was an indication of things to come. The second half didn't get any better for the frustrated Titans. Poway just wasn't used to this kind of defensive pressure, and it showed. When defensive back Steve Mosier picked off this Titan aerial, it spelled the beginning of the end for Poway's playoff dreams. The rest of the third quarter would belong to the Helix offense. Despite their dominance, the Scotty offense was suffering the same virus that had afflicted them the previous week, a severe lack of points. Plum sought to remedy that situation in a hurry. After Leon White bowled his way deep into enemy territory, Plum hit Carl Durrell with successive passes, and the Highlanders were that much closer to the clinching score. From the one, it was Al Fernandez for the touchdown and win number 11. The Highlanders had reached the CIF Finals. The undefeated Scotties were making a return trip to the spacious confines of San Diego Stadium, where they had beaten San Pasqual in a 1978 thriller. The task tonight would be no simpler. If the opponent looked familiar, there was a reason. The arch-rival Mount Miguel Matadors, Grossmont League runner-ups, had destroyed two highly respected foes to earn a ticket to this game. The Highlanders had drilled the Matadors in a high-scoring showdown earlier in the year. Since that time, the Matadors had improved dramatically, and no one could anticipate the kind of game that might take place tonight. Right away, the Scotty passing attack took wings. A Plum to Galloway connection took the ball inside Mount Miguel territory. The Highlanders had scored 35 points in the first meeting of these clubs, and the Matadors didn't plan on playing giveaway in the rematch. An interception killed the drive, and it was Mount Miguel's turn. As they had all year long, the defense came through. The Matadors went nowhere, and the Scotties, who had been behind in games only twice all year, would not suffer that fate now. Warming up to the challenge, Plum and his comrades began to move the ball. Jim Plum set a CIF record for completions in a season, and he added to that total now. Behind the protection of Coach Don Van Hook's offensive line, Plum coolly loaded and fired. But despite the efforts of Ken Webster, Drew Ramsey, Jeff Stoddard, Jerry Schneep, and Jeff Tanzola, key mistakes killed early drives. Following a Jerry Schneep punt, the Matadors took over with good field position, and the pressure reverted to the Helix defense. During 1980, the Mean Green gave up an average of only 7 points per game, and the way things were going for the hapless Matadors, they might consider themselves lucky to get that. Mount Miguel went nowhere on this possession and was forced to give the ball back. Plum and company would give it another go. Again, Plum took to the air, and again the offense moved into high gear. The Matadors knew Helix would throw the football, but so had all previous opponents. The problem was doing something about it. The Highlanders had averaged over 200 yards a game through the air during the campaign, and at this rate they were going to get that tonight. The problem was they still hadn't found the end zone. And they wouldn't on this drive, because another turnover deprived them of the football. Rick Ash had his hands full now. The momentum could shift at any moment. Leon White, the man who had fumbled just moments before, quickly atoned for his error with this interception. As a very frustrating first quarter ended, the game began to take on a distinctly defensive flavor. The Highlander offense was literally sometimes inches away from taking command, but it wasn't happening yet. halftime, a scoreless tie. While Jerry Kirk's marching Highlanders entertained the 15,000 fans, Coach Arnies was patiently planning for the second half. This kind of first-half frustration will often leave a team flat and listless. What would be the fate of the Helix Highlanders? As far as the defense was concerned, it was business as usual. If the Matadors entertained any thoughts of the second-half resurrection, they could forget it. In the third quarter, the Matadors managed 1 first down. Actually, that was a significant improvement. They hadn't gotten any in the first half. The Scotty offense was struggling valiantly, but the scoreboard was still blank. Something would have to give soon. Coach Arnies assured his signal caller that the odds favored the Highlanders. Just stick with the game plan. They can't hold us forever. As the final 12 minutes of the season began to count down, Arnies felt something was about to happen. And all of a sudden, Alan Durden was racing for the goal line. When he crossed the magic marker, Helix fans went crazy. It was by far and away the biggest 6 points Helix had scored all season. Because the way the defense was playing, it might as well have been 60. But there was still plenty of time for a Mount Miguel comeback. The defense redoubled their efforts. Since Torrey Pine's first quarter touchdown in round 1, Helix had not allowed a point. They were now working on 11.5 consecutive scoreless quarters. The defense would take no prisoners tonight, and the Helix offense was all fired up for the kill. Plum fired broadside after broadside at the sinking Matadors, and receiver coach Mel Jacobs watched his charges chew up the yardage. Arnies could feel the dam breaking away, and Jim Plum and Carl Durrell opened the floodgates. The all-league wide receiver sped across the middle, and Plum's guided missile was right on target. Before the surprised defenders could react, Durrell was celebrating the score. The Helix offense had given the defense some breathing room for the first time in the playoffs, and it couldn't have come at a more opportune time. The Highlanders were just over 4 minutes away from the CIF crown. Mount Miguel was now forced to try the airwaves, and it would prove to be their undoing. Kevin Durden's interception and return thwarted the Matador drive, and even though the apparent touchdown return was called back, well, Jim Arnies had reason enough to smile. As the clock counted down, the Helix defense made the final seconds of 1980 as productive as any. Bob Jekyll's last-minute interception sealed a perfect season. The Highlander faithful prepared to celebrate their second title in 3 years. Jim Plum fell on the football, and the Helix Highlanders were the official 1980 San Diego County champions. For Jim Arnies, his staff and players, how sweet it was. Ranked number 1 all season, Helix had fought off upset-minded challengers week after week, and now they could finally enjoy the ultimate prize. But even as Jim Arnies accepted the rewards of an undefeated season, he had to already be thinking about next year. In 1981, the race will begin anew. The next generation of Highlanders will face new challenges, and they will meet those challenges with the same tools that carried this team to the very top. Determination, pride, and above all, the will to win.